Welcome to I Scream, You Scream. We are your weekly scoop of the most chilling histories, mysteries, and paranormal perplexities. My name's Kathryn.
I'm Gina.
And for the month of July, we're telling stories about bars. Bars, watering holes, drinking establishments. Do we still call them watering holes? I just pulled that.
We do now.
Okay, cool. And we're doing that while we have boozy ice cream. Obviously, there was no other way to do it. Per the chain letter that we accidentally cursed ourselves with, since you're listening to this right now, you do have to share with a friend in order to break the curse. Unfortunately, so sorry. But yeah, let's grab a drink and take a sip. Cheers.
Cheers, my love.
Mine looks gross on camera. I'm so sorry.
Mine looks wildly unhealthy on camera, so don't worry about it.
Yours looks delicious. What are you drinking
for
this month?
I'm drinking a grasshopper, which technically does not have ice cream in it in the normal sense, but it involves both ice and cream. I'm going avant-garde for July. What about you?
True. Hold on, let me take my lap tape. My drink has a scoop of rainbow sherbet. It has seriously melted, so it looks gross on screen. Yeah, it is champagne and rainbow sherbet. So it's a float, a sherbet float.
Great summer drink.
So good, yes. I could not decide. I was between like 5 different things, and all of them sounded good, but none of them sounded like anything I wanted to put. There was a lot of blending going on, which I'm like, that's fine, but I'm not a huge blended drink person. And then, I don't know, it just clicked one day. I was like, what about just a sherbet float? Those are delicious.
I fucking love floats. I haven't had a float in so long.
We do floats in the summertime. Like, we'll do like the iced mug and I always get orange soda and vanilla ice cream, and he obviously does root beer.
Such a nostalgic thing.
So good. It's so good on like a hot.
That's what I was just thinking. Yeah. Like muggy, humid. You feel like you're walking through like hot maple syrup, and you can just have this cold, crisp. We have something exciting.
We do have something exciting. I was very excited when I read this in the notes, and I was like, oh yeah, duh, I guess I already knew this. You and I are going to see each other in a few short months.
We get to see, like, physically in person, we get to hang out.
In physical person, human flesh.
Yes. When was the last time we hung out in person?
I have no clue.
Me neither.
I literally cannot remember.
Oh, I remember. I was in Chicago for my sister's wedding last May, and you and Phil came down for a day. That's
why I couldn't remember it, because I keep thinking it was my birthday.
That's what I keep thinking,
I was like,
too.
That feels so long ago. It wasn't. It's because we weren't at one of our homes, so I just forget it. Yeah,
it was like you guys came to Chicago, and we just kind of walked around.
It was like
went to
a day
diner,
trip. Yeah,
got drinks, and then said our goodbyes.
Yeah, we get to see each other for a whole week. You'll be here in November. I don't really want to talk about it very much because I'm going to get too excited, and we're not going to get to this episode.
That's going to be the whole episode 37. We get to hang out.
We just talk about hanging out. Exactly. But yeah, well, stay tuned. We will have some fun things for you all.
Yes,
when
we'll have in person. Fun surprises. Probably worth mentioning. We're hanging out in November, but that whatever comes from that probably will not be in the world until December. So probably not spooky season by the time you hear it, but we're going to be bringing the spooky season energy, which we do 24/7 anyway. Yeah. So whatever.
Even without this podcast.
Yeah, true.
Always spooky season, especially when we're together, because we are terrifying.
Extremely so.
to anyone who encounters us.
Speaking of terrifying things,
let's roll through. Yes. I love this.
I have a podcast recommendation. So tell me. As you know, Kathryn, I've been going on kind of like a witch journey. Like I'm trying to figure out, okay, what does my practice look like? Where do I feel the most drawn? What can I learn about? What's out there? And
I love this so much for you.
I received a recommendation for a podcast called Witch by BBC Radio 4. It's available on Spotify. It's a limited series. I want to say it's like maybe 15 episodes. I don't want to get that wrong. Let me look it up real quick.
Okay. I love this BBC.
Me too.
production.
Yes. Okay, yeah, so it's 13 episodes, obviously. Spooky
Obviously.
13. And it's hosted by the most amazing woman. Her name is India Rakison. And she just goes through, and the whole premise of it is like, what does it mean to be a witch today? And so she has the
I would
episode
love
that
to
I
listen
just
to that.
listened to was the Midwives and Healers episode, where she digs into the history of like women who are midwives being accused of being witches. And, you know, is that actually true, or is that just something we tell ourselves about the witch trials? She also has an
Interesting.
episode on magic and whether or not it's quote real, and how it works and how people have used it throughout history. And it's just phenomenal. I have been blasting my way through it because it's so good, but I highly, highly recommend, if you even have a tiny little interest in witchcraft, modern or otherwise, give it a
That's
listen.
fun. That sounds interesting.
It's very good.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check it out. I should just add that to my list right now. Otherwise, I'll forget the name, even though it's very straightforward. Speaking of weird things, I hear you have a story for me.
I don't know who told you that, but they're right. I do have a story for you. I will say this is one of the stories that feels like gossip. So I'm excited to tell you about it. It was also one of those episodes where I had to draw a line in the sand of researching it. I was researching it literally up until yesterday when I finished writing what this episode is actually going to be, because there's just so much out there and there are so many fucking rabbit holes you can go down. The whole thing is very dramatic. So this week, I'm taking us back to England because I am who I am.
Shocker.
Yeah, sorry. Oops. Sorry. I made a mistake that was not a mistake. It was very intentional. So literally had 5 sips of my cocktail and I'm like, woohoo! Oh, yes. Okay. Trigger warning. This is serious. I'm going to be talking about murder, including the death of children. If you don't want to hear that right now, totally get it. I will also warn you ahead of time. There is a bar in this story, technically a pub, but it's not a story about a bar. It's just a story with a bar in it. I was getting all nervous about breaking the rules, and then I remembered that we make the rules, so
yeah,
whatever.
there are literally no rules.
Whatever. Welcome to Bar Month. We're kind of doing our best.
Yay.
Okay, I'm going to get started. So back in the 1800s, there was this chick named Maria. And Maria lived in a small farming village called Polstead, where it was like everyone knew everyone vibes. We've had a couple of stories like this in the past, just like everyone was in each other's business. Everyone paid attention. They knew what was going on. It was like this tiny, quiet, obscure little place that nobody had ever heard about. And Maria was born there on July 24th, 1801. She was a Leo, which is our rising signs. That's nice. And she grew up in a working class family. Her dad was a mole catcher, which is exactly what it sounds like.
Immediately, yes.
Just caught some moles. And this was a time of pretty strict hierarchies in the UK. Like, there's still a lot of classism that goes on over here, but back then it was even more prevalent. And Maria's family was kind of one of the lower rungs on the ladder, if you know what I mean. We don't know an extensive amount about Maria's childhood, but we do know she had a bit of a colorful relationship with men. And by the time she was in her early 20s, she had had 2 children out of wedlock. Her first child, I know, just wait, dude, this whole story is just wild. Her first kid was with a guy named Thomas Corder, and their relationship was not great. Thomas came from a landowning family, so he was, quote, above Maria from a social perspective. So it was one of those, like, I'll sleep with you, but we have to keep it a secret situations, which, like, fuck you. And it was all like Maria was fine with it until she got pregnant. And then it became kind of hard to hide. Unfortunately, the baby did not survive its infancy, and the dad, Thomas, died shortly after it was born while attempting to walk across a frozen pond.
Oh no, we've talked about this before.
We totally have. Yeah. One of my biggest fears. So pretty soon after he died, Maria went looking for some comfort, and she found it in the arms of a guy named Peter. Peter was also part of a landowning family. Fun fact, his sister was Maria's family's landlord. So there was like some interesting power dynamics there. And
Yeah.
when Maria got pregnant this time, the kid did survive, but Peter refused to marry Maria. Instead, he just paid child support to the tune of £20 per year, which in today's money is about £2,500 or like just north of $3,000. Not a whole lot.
Can you remind me what year
This is 1800s.
You
So
said
like
it. Okay.
1820s is where we're mostly going to be spending our time. My favorite
Okay.
period of history.
You do. Yeah, you do tell a lot of stories in like mid 1800s.
The 1800s are great, man.
Okay, sure. Why not? You heard it here first, folks.
I mean, except for all the horrible things that were happening and, you know, all that awful stuff.
I just feel like 1800s are like a lost time. I'm like, I have no idea what goes on. Like,
It was
I
wacky.
believe anything you say. Yeah.
1800s were fucking wacky. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They were. I feel like it was a transition period between like super old time and like modern time.
It was. Yeah. Because it was, I think I'm getting this right. I think the Enlightenment was like 1700s. And so when you got into the 1800s, like people had kind of moved away from a purely religious mode of thinking and creation when it comes to art. And they were focusing on things like secularism. Like satire was born around this time, probably like within that, you know, century, not around that time. But just all these cool, fun things were happening, except for in this story, which a lot of bad things happen. Anyway, back to the tragedy.
But it's still a great story.
Still a great
Don't
story.
go anywhere. Okay.
So yes, her relationship with Peter kind of ended there. So by this point, Maria is about 23 or 24 years old. She has 2 births by 2 different guys, 1 living child, and no husband. Which I do kind of want to land on that situation for a sec, because as hard as that sounds now, it was even worse back then for a few different reasons. First off, society was really conservative about things like sex before marriage, particularly when it came to women. And there was a massive stigma attached to it. Having a kid out of wedlock was a really, really bad look, which extra sucks when you live in a society where a woman's power is in many ways just defined by their reputation and also who they were married to. So maybe I'll take back what I said about loving the 1800s. Parts of this were really shit. You do get some interesting stories out of it, though. But anyway, back then, if you had a negative reputation and no husband, you were kind of shit out of luck. The second thing that sucks about this is that back then, you could actually be brought up on charges for having too many kids out of wedlock.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It was literally called bastardy.
That's weird. I never knew. Is there like a magic number, or is it relative?
I think it's relative.
Do you know?
And the reason I think it's relative is because, like, the reason why you would get prosecuted for it is because local funds were used in part to support families that had children out of wedlock. So if you had too many, it was like you are draining the local economy thing. So I would assume that it depends on where you are.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And that does come back later. So just, this is the world we are operating in. All right, back to the story. So you remember the first guy that Maria got with, the guy, that Thomas guy that fell through the ice? Mm-hmm. Well, a few years after he died, after the whole Peter thing was over, Maria started hooking up with Thomas's brother.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Oh my God, Maria. I had the same reaction. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Thomas's brother's name was William Corder, and he was a little bit younger than Maria. When they got together, he was around 22. She was like 24-ish.
Okay.
And just like his brother, Will was also a bit above Maria when it came to society. But he also had kind of a bad reputation. He was a ladies' man, and he was one of those guys who views laws as like friendly suggestions rather than rules. And when he was in school, fun fact, his nickname was Foxy, not because he was hot, but because he was sly and clever like a fox and like crafty.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So he had forged checks in the past. He'd been involved with stealing livestock. He had once tried to fraudulently sell his dad's own pigs. Like, just not a great guy. Definitely bad boy vibes. He had been sent away from Polstead for a while because he was just too much of a little delinquent, but he came back when his brother died. And just after that, his dad and his other brothers would go on to die within like 18 months, which left Will to run the farm with his mom and his remaining sisters. And around this time is when we think he linked up with Maria. We don't know for sure because it was a teeny tiny town. They had probably known each other like their whole lives. They could have shacked up whenever, but this is when we're like, okay, this is when they like totally got together kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So Will also wanted to keep their relationship a secret, but Maria didn't want that. She was done playing all of those games. She wanted to get married, and when she got pregnant, again, the pressure really got put on Will. She wound up giving birth to their child in 1827 when she was 25 years old. Unfortunately, this child died as well, and Maria and Will told family members that they had buried the body about 10 miles out of town. And this is where we get our first big rumor in this story.
Oh.
So later on, whispers would start circulating that this child hadn't died of natural causes because no records of the child's burial have ever been found. And when people went to the place where Maria and Will said they buried the child, there were no traces of a grave anywhere. Like no like freshly churned dirt or whatever, no markers, no headstones, just like nothing. It was just compacted soil the way you would see as if nothing had happened to it. So they might have killed this child to avoid Maria being prosecuted for having another kid out of wedlock.
Oh.
There is more to this bit of the story, but I'm going to save that for later because I don't want to give too much away. Despite whatever happened here, Maria was very much still on the marriage bandwagon. And by this point, it kind of seemed like maybe Will was starting to come around to the idea. That summer, they were hanging out with Maria's stepmom, who, by the way, was only like a little bit older than Maria. One of the sources I found said she was 1 year older than Maria. One source said 10. Either way, gross.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like, ugh. I'm really regretting saying I like the 1800s. I'm going to have a sip.
Listen, it's not like things were better.
I'm not signing off
like
on
in
it.
Other periods throughout history, okay? Like,
if I was the CEO of the 1800s, it would have all been different.
You know what? We believe you.
But yeah, anyway, they were hanging out with Maria's stepmom. And Will told Maria that she should meet him at the Red Barn later, which was about a half a mile or like just under a kilometer away from where Maria lived. So she met him there, and Will said that he had heard rumors that local officials were planning to prosecute her because of all of the illegitimate kids. And his solution was, hey, why don't we finally get married? Like, let's elope to Ipswich, which is like 15 miles / 24 kilometers away. And Maria was like, fuck yeah, let's do it. I've been wanting to marry you for a while. Green light, let's go. So they planned to leave like shortly after this conversation. But their trip just kept getting delayed and delayed. Not for anything interesting, just like boring family reasons, like random little shit that makes you stay in town. But on May 18th, 1827, Will showed up at Maria's place and said that there was a constable with a warrant and they couldn't wait any longer. So Maria kind of hemmed and hawed about leaving for a sec because it was the middle of the day. And so her argument was like, if I leave now, people will see me going and it'll make it easier for the constable to find me because it's like middle of the day. There's nowhere to hide. Will says, oh, it'll be fine. Just put on some men's clothing. I'll carry your stuff to the barn. You can change back into your normal clothes there, and then we'll head off from there because it's a little bit more remote. So whatever. Will leaves to go to the barn. Maria follows like 15 minutes later, and that was the last time she was seen alive.
Oh. Oh no.
After this, Will disappeared from Polstead for a few days. And when he came back, he told people that Maria was staying with one of his friends in Ipswich. He said that they hadn't gotten married yet, but he was working on getting a marriage license, so pretty soon they would be man and wife. And when people asked, okay, why didn't you bring her back with you? Like, that's a little bit weird. He said that, he couldn't because they're as good as married now. And because she was below him, his family would be really mad if they came back together. And people were immediately like, that's dumb. Where the fuck is Maria, Will? Like, they just weren't buying it. And they kept asking and asking and asking. And eventually the pressure on Will got so intense that he ran away again. Like, he fled. While he was gone, he wrote letters to Maria's family saying that they had moved to the Isle of Wight together. And he kind of wrote back and forth with Maria's family for a while. And, you know, her family started asking, like, why isn't Maria the one sending us these letters? And he comes up with every excuse in the fucking book. He's like, oh, she's sick. She's hurt her hand. She did write a letter to you, but it must have gotten lost in the mail. Like, on and went. He had a million excuses for why Maria was not actually contacting her family. And pretty soon, he just stopped writing altogether.
Oh my God.
So this whole thing was like suspicious as fuck. And people recognized that. Everyone knew it. Around this time, Maria's stepmom started talking about these dreams she was having that Maria hadn't gone away with Will. She dreamed that Maria had been killed in the Red Barn. And I think I remember reading that this took place over a series of like 3 dreams about this. Okay. So kind of Greenbrier Ghost vibes a little bit.
I was going to say, honestly, so I started thinking of Greenbrier Ghost when you were talking about the bad boy. Which one was that, Peter?
Will is the bad boy.
Will, yeah. I thought I was thinking of Greenbrier Ghost then.
Trout, yeah.
Yeah.
Forgot he was also a bad boy. That's why you shouldn't get together with a bad boy unless they're secretly a good boy.
Just follow your heart.
Unless it's with a guy named Will Quarter. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So Maria's stepmom said that the dreams were intense and very convincing. And so on April 19th, 1828, she convinced Maria's dad to go to the barn with her and just have a little look around. So he got his special mole catching shovel, which apparently is a thing, and off they went. When they got there, they started kind of, going through the barn. And specifically, they dug around in a grain storage bin where they found the remains of a young woman buried in a sack. The body was pretty decomposed by this point, but there were enough identifying factors there to be like, oh shit, is this Maria? Could this be Maria? So Maria's dad immediately calls the authorities, and they decide to hold an inquest to figure out A, is this person Maria? And B, how did this person die? And they decided to conduct this inquest in a pub. Classic. Specifically, a place in Polstead called the Cock Inn, which I'm not going to make any comments about. Oh. And it still stands to this day. You can still go there.
Oh, nice. Mm-hmm. As we will, as we should.
I frequent the Cock Inn myself.
Do you?
Nope. It's a sex joke.
Okay. Got it. All right. Late to the party on that one.
Same
Sorry.
Page. But yeah, you can still go there. I have some pictures of it. We'll put up. I want to go there. It's on my list now.
Okay.
And I know I do want to talk about the fact that it is weird that they took her to a pub, but villages that tiny didn't have like a civic center building or something like that where they could easily do these things. And a pub like this was easy to get to. Everyone knew where it was. And so it was just like, let's do it in the pub. There's plenty of space there. It'll be easy. And it was here that Maria's sister formally identified her body. She recognized her dress, and also Maria had been missing a few teeth, which was consistent with the teeth that were missing on the body. Maria also had a green handkerchief tied very tightly around her neck, which was recognized as belonging to William fucking Corder.
Oh, no.
The cause of death was a little bit harder to figure out because of the state of the body was such that it could have been a few different things. There was a wound on the face that could have been a stab wound, and they couldn't rule out strangulation because of the whole handkerchief thing. but also there were gunshot wounds and there were additional stab wounds on the neck and hands. So all in all, they weren't sure what killed her, but this was enough to know that she had been murdered by someone.
Mm-hmm.
So they engaged a local constable to start looking into this. And Will was suspect number one, as he fucking should have been. Now, as you can imagine, I feel like we've talked about this before. It wasn't very easy to find people back then. We didn't have things like satellites and phones and credit cards. Like, you just have open country. He could be anywhere. And it blows my mind that, like, police officers back then were even able to do this sort of thing. Fucking wild.
It's like keeps me up at night. I don't know how anyone was ever found. Ever. I don't know how things were ever solved.
It must have been the most stressful job.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how anyone did anything at all.
Me neither. Anyway, yeah. Anyway. I have no fucking clue. We're all very impressed.
Beats me.
But yeah, so to get around this, the constable teamed up with a London-based police officer to track down Will. Another fun fact, that police officer that he teamed up with would eventually go on to lead the investigation into Spring-Heeled Jack, which we talked about in the Hammersmith Ghost Panic episode.
Yeah, we did.
It's a funny world.
You're going to have to do an episode on Spring-Heeled Jack.
I know. I was listening to a different podcast cover Spring-Heeled Jack recently, and I was like, yeah, we need to do it. Yeah. I will. I'll do it at some point.
Okay.
Eventually, they were able to figure out where Will was. You ready for this? You're not going to like it.
Oh, I hate
because he had taken out a Lonely Hearts ad in the paper.
William. What the fuck?
Do you want to hear some of it?
What the fuck? Obviously, I want to hear some of it. What the fuck? What?
Okay.
What? Mm-hmm. Jesus.
It was originally written in language that kind of made my eyes glaze over a little bit. So this is the paraphrased, more modern version of it. A private gentleman, aged 24, financially independent and blessed with a great personality, is looking for a respectable, property-owning lady who wants to build a cozy domestic life, but he'll let you keep your property. How fucking gracious of him. The gentleman has recently lost the head of his family, and things at home have gotten a bit intense, but he would rather not get into the messy details. He's ready to settle down and promises to be tender and kind. Only serious replies welcome.
Okay, I'm sorry for interrupting because that's what I was just going to say. When it reminds me of like dating profiles where guys are like, I'm so cool and jacked and rich, no hoes. Like, yeah. You know what I mean? Like, or like, basic bitches don't message me, or like, like don't swipe right or whatever. That's the energy that's bringing.
I'm trying to like cast my mind back to my dating app because there was some cringy
That's why I'm
shit.
struggling with there is like if you're still on the apps, let us know what the exact, because there is a specific way that they say it that's like such an eye roll. And also, if you come across those, don't swipe right.
No, take a screenshot and send it to us, but
send
don't
them
swipe
to us.
Right. Yeah,
but don't swipe right. Guys like that are such jerks. I hate people like that.
Yeah, it was very. But surprisingly, he got a ton of replies to it. Records kind of vary on like how many replies, but at least I think 49.
Gross.
He also ended that ad by providing an address where people could reach him.
This man's on the run.
He's on the run.
From the fucking law?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus. All right, well, I take it back. I know how people were found now.
Yeah, they were fucking
idiots.
They were horny and they took ads out in the paper about it. That's how they got found.
Classic.
Anyway, so by the time they tracked him down, he had already married one of the women who responded to this ad.
Okay.
Same
That's
reaction,
obnoxious.
dude. Yep. So they picked him up at a place called Everly Grove House, which some sources said that it was a women's boarding house. Some said it was a girls' school, which is even grosser. Both of them I hate. Yeah. Either way, he was running this new place with his new wife, Mary. Now, this police officer knew that if Will saw them coming, he would just run again. So he didn't go in guns blazing. He was smart about it. He went to the house and pretended that he wanted to board his own daughter. there. So, of course, he was welcomed in. He was shown to the parlor where he found a few ladies having breakfast alongside one William Corder. Police officer pulled Will to the side and informed him that he was charged with the murder of Maria Marten. Will said, "I don't even know who that is." Police officer
Ew.
said, "Let's try that again. Did you know her?" Will said, "Nope." Police officer said, "Last chance. Did you know Maria Marten?" Will said no, so the police officer, quote, "brought him down and had him committed." I don't know exactly what that means, but I like the imagery.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
That's intense.
I know. Yeah, I think they were just holding him somewhere while they searched the house.
Yeah.
And while they were searching the house, they found 2 pistols, a passport, and letters that suggested that someone had tipped off Will that Maria's body had been found. So all of those things
Oh.
put together, Will was getting ready to run again by the time that they found
Yeah.
him. By this point, they had everything they needed to put this guy on trial. Real quick, in between the time Maria's body was found and when the trial actually started, the press got a hold of this whole thing, and society latched onto this case like crazy. The nature of the crime, combined with really sensational press coverage, combined with the fact that this was a time where literacy rates were on their way up, meant that people just latched onto this thing. They went nuts about it. They were invested in it. They were talking about it. They were doing puppet shows about this thing. Like, everyone totally thought Will was guilty. In fact, back then they had this thing called broadsides, which were just like 1-page little tabloids. And one specific broadside about this case sold over 1 million copies in the
Wow, that's a lot.
1800s. It's a
That's a
lot.
lot. Wow.
They were even putting on plays about this in the back room of pubs. Another bar tie-in. That's like,
Wow.
it's a very British thing. I don't know if it's a London thing or a British thing, but they do like little mini plays in like the back room of a pub. I have been to one and they are very fun. So they
Oh,
did
that
that with
sounds
this story.
fun.
It is. It's good fun because you get to drink while you watch it, which you also get to do at normal plays, but getting up to go to the bathroom sucks during normal plays. At a pub, it's much easier.
Yeah. That's a lot more fun. I feel like the closest comparison would be like a small dinner theater type thing
Yeah.
here.
So public interest in this case was so intense that they made people get tickets to be allowed in the courtroom.
Whoa.
And even then, the judge reportedly had a hard time getting to his seat because he had to wade through the crowds of people. Like, the fucking judge couldn't get to his little judge stool or whatever they sit on. I don't know if there's an official name. Judge
I
throne.
don't either. Judge Throne.
The trial
That's gotta be
itself, Judge Throne. The trial itself officially started on the 7th of August, 1828, with Will entering a plea of not guilty. Pretty much one of the first issues they ran into setting up this trial is that, again, they don't really know how Maria was actually killed. The formal accusation was that Will had killed Maria by shooting her with a pistol and stabbing her. But just to be on the safe side, they also indicted him on 9 other counts along similar lines. It was like if we can't find you guilty of killing her this way, maybe you killed her that way kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
When it came time for the witnesses, Maria's stepmom gave testimony about the day that Maria had disappeared, and she spoke about the dreams that had led her to the body. Is worth noting the dreams didn't technically count as evidence. She just did mention them in the trial.
Mm-hmm.
Maria's 10-year-old brother took the stand, and he said that he had seen Will with a pistol shortly before the murder, and that he had seen him walking away from the barn with a pickaxe after the fact. We would later find out
Yikes.
that the pickaxe was used to dig the hole in the grain where Maria's body was found. A constable from Polstead also spoke about the whole, like, were you about to arrest Maria for having kids illegitimately or outside of marriage or whatever? And he said that he had never even had a warrant for it, let alone told Will that he had a warrant for it. So that dismantles
Oh.
Will's whole "we need to leave before they catch you" shit. Like, it's looking
So he
more
just
and
straight up
more. He
lied.
just straight up lied. Like, it's looking more and more like he trapped her in this situation intentionally.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. One of their neighbors told a story about how after Maria had died, but before they like all knew that she was dead, like before the body was found. This neighbor had been having a conversation with Will one day about kids for some reason, like it just came up in conversation. And Will said that Maria would never have a child again. Neighbor was like, you can't know that. Like she might, you never know. And Will said, I will be dead if she'll have any more.
Ew.
Yeah. The prosecution's stance was that Will had never intended to marry Maria, but because she knew so much about his criminal history, she had a lot of power over him, which Will didn't like. So killing Maria was basically his way of getting out of the whole marriage situation without risking her tattling on him in revenge. Stupid and dumb, and we hate it.
What the fuck? Yeah.
So then Will takes the stand. And he gave this long, flowery speech about how he had known Maria and he had been at the barn that day, but Maria had actually killed herself after Will said that he wouldn't marry her. He said that he had been so surprised and afraid by it that he had buried her body without going for help or letting anyone know what had happened.
Okay.
The things your face is doing. Absolutely, yes, me too. And it's bullshit for a few different reasons, outside of it just being not fucking true. But it's extra fucked up because back then, suicide was this big offense. So if she had committed suicide, she would have been buried in unhallowed ground and all of her property would have been given to the king. So even in death, he's completely throwing her under the bus and he's trying to fuck her over just to save his own ass. It's reprehensible.
Gross.
When it came time for the jury to deliberate, it only took them 35 minutes to come back with a verdict of guilty.
Oh, good.
Hooray, yes. The judge sentenced Will to be hung within the next few days, and afterwards he was to be dissected. We spoke about this a tiny bit in the Hammersmith Ghost Panic episode. Yeah, back then, like medical colleges often used the bodies of executed criminals for dissection. Will was no exception. So it wasn't like an extra fuck you to Will. It was just kind of standard procedure.
I'm like imagining them being like, let's see what the fuck's going on inside this evil piece of shit. And it's like, no, that's literally how science works.
Will was put behind bars, and shortly before he was taken to be executed, he confessed that he had shot Maria through the eye after an argument, killing her.
Ugh.
Now cast your mind back to the beginning of this episode, where we talked about how they might have killed their own child. In Will's confession, he said that what he and Maria were arguing about that had led him to kill her was that the, quote, real grave of their child might be discovered. Take from that what you will. There's not much detail in the confession at all. It's just kind of that and then done. But it's clear to me that for whatever reason, they were hiding something about that kid, and Will wanted that secret to die with Maria.
Yikes.
Yeah, big yikes. Just 4 days after the trial, Will was hung in front of thousands of spectators. His last words were, "I am guilty. My sentence is just. I deserve my fate, and may God have mercy on my soul."
Damn.
Which is kind of nice to hear.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the stories that make it through are like so dramatic, you know? I don't know. That's kind of refreshing to know he wasn't a worm all the way to the very end.
And even like,
I don't know.
Like, even if it's so clear from the evidence that someone is guilty, if they go from life to death without confessing, there's always something in my brain that's like, what if somehow we got it wrong? So it's
I do that.
nice when
time.
There's a confession because you can be like, okay, we 100% got the right guy. You for sure did this. We didn't fuck up somewhere. There's not like still a killer out there.
Even modern cases when it's we have DNA evidence and everything is so indisputable and I should not question it at all. They're in jail maintaining their innocence. I'm always like,
there's like that tiny part of you, like, just what if, tiny what if.
Yeah.
Which I think is good. I think that makes us human. I think that's a good thing. I think it would be bad if we didn't have that, to be honest.
Oh, I'm not sorry about this at all.
Yeah.
I'm like openly like, I don't know. But it's because I couldn't do that. I've said this on the podcast before. Like, I would not be able to maintain my innocence. So when other people don't, I'm like, oh no.
I think your exact words were,
knee jerk.
I would fold like a broken lawn chair.
I would. I can't lie.
It's relatable.
I really
yeah.
am. I am not. I cannot lie.
Well, neither could Will in the end. After Will was hung, the hangman took his trousers and stockings, which sounds really weird. But apparently back then there was this thing called executioner's rights, which was, it basically meant that the executioner had the right to take anything the guilty person brought to the gallows with them. And in this case, trousers and stockings. When they took Will to be dissected, they couldn't examine his brain for some reason, so instead they performed a phrenological examination on his head. Skull, I guess. We have said this on the podcast before, but just to caveat, phrenology used to be much more common than it is now, but it's basically just a pseudoscience that was used to justify decades, if not centuries, of human rights abuses, so grain of salt. It uses the formation in the shape of your skull to make statements about who you are as a person. In this instance, the examination concluded that Will's skull was most developed in the areas corresponding with secrets and destruction, while being underdeveloped in pretty much all of the areas associated with being a good person.
I love the blanket statement of just like, Skull says that he's an asshole.
I know. Yeah. And that's why, like, I almost hate when, like, a phrenology thing, I hate when I agree with it because I'm like, I don't agree with you as a practice, but in this specific instance, yeah, that guy was a dick, you know?
Yeah.
Even broken clocks are right twice a day. Isn't that what they say? Broken skulls say shit right. I don't know. Whatever.
Yep. That's also what they say. Probably somewhat you just said it, so it's said.
I read that on Urban Dictionary. Yeah. So from here on out, there is some gross stuff that happens with his body. So if you don't want to hear about gross stuff, you might just want to skip forward like 5 minutes. Because they were not done with Will's body just yet. A surgeon named George Creed took Will's skin and used it to bind a book about the murder case.
What? I'm sorry. I did not mean to laugh just now. That was not a funny laugh. That was
wild.
Wow.
And in 2025, literally this year, they discovered a second book that was also bound with Will's skin.
Okay, what was it?
I think it was just another copy of the same book. I tried to find that out and I couldn't find anything on it. All I know is that there are two books.
Okay.
It was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
I literally thought you were going to be like, I don't know, someone did some, like, their grimoire with it or something spooky. Like, it was not about him.
It's a signed copy of LeVar Burton's memoir.
Oh my
the
God.
Man least likely to use skin to bind a book. Yeah.
That's gross.
Okay. Parts of Will's scalp were also displayed in a shop on Oxford Street, which is like the shopping drag in London. It always has huge crowds, and it was supposed to be a crowd pleaser thing. Will's skeleton would go on to be exhibited in hospitals, museums, all sorts of places. And at one point, it was put in West Suffolk Hospital, and they rigged it up so that when someone walked towards it, like they approached it, Will's skeleton's arm would lift up and point at a donation box.
Sorry, hold on. What? This isn't funny, but I'm a little confused.
And
was this like a normal thing to do with people's bodies, or was it because he was a criminal or something?
I think part of it was that he was a criminal. Part of it was also, in my opinion, the fact that in this era, like Victorian era-ish, they had a really morbid fascination with death and things that had to do with death. And so like bodies and corpses and skeletons and death in general, it wasn't, I don't want to say as sensitive a topic, but it was certainly more of a part of life.
I've just never heard of this vast array of uses for body after death. I don't know. I guess.
Nor have I.
I knew the whole research thing. We've talked about that, and I just keep forgetting to apply it to the stories. But using it for hospital decor and marketing campaigns is kind of, I'm sorry, but it is a little bit funny to think of like a Halloween skeleton doing that in a hospital today. Like, that's kind of cute. I'm sorry. It is a little bit
Yeah.
cute. But also, like, I understand it's a human body and that makes it morbid and gross.
And that shit kept going. They only cremated his skeleton in 2004.
Whoa. Okay.
Well
What the
over a
fuck? Where was it?
century. It just like it was doing the rounds. Like it was like hospitals for a while, museums for a while. Different people had different parts of it, which we'll talk about in a bit. There's like a thing with his skull that we'll get into. Um
Okay.
okay, yeah, so that actually is a great transition
Hmm.
because that brings me to the rumors section of this story because there are some rumors that we
Okay.
haven't talked about yet. I'm going to start with the skull one because we were just talking about that. There's a rumor that Will's skull had a curse on it,
Okay. I'm listening.
which we love. At one point, the skull fell into the possession of a doctor who was something of like a collector of memorabilia about this case. And apparently, once this doctor brought the skull home, strange fucking shit started happening. He started hearing voices. He started seeing people that weren't there, like ghostly apparitions. And one particular night, he woke up to a very loud sound in the room below him. So he went to check it out, and he found that the cabinet where the skull was had opened on its own. The box containing the skull had been smashed, and the skull itself had mysteriously moved across the room of its own
Oh.
volition. This freaked him out so much that he gave the skull to one of his friends, kind of a dick move. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, kind of rude. I would not give you a cursed skull.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, man. That's what this friendship is. You know what I mean? And then weird things started to happen to his friend, too. Unfortunately, there's not much record on like what his friend actually experienced, but apparently it was so bad that the friend decided to give the skull a Christian burial in an attempt to stop all of the madness. And apparently it worked. They buried it in
Mm.
hollowed ground and they were never disturbed again. So that's rumor number one. The second rumor is that Maria's stepmom had actually been having an affair with Will and helped him kill Maria.
What?
Yeah. So this rumor goes that after Maria had been killed, Will kind of kept up the pretense of a relationship with the stepmom. Her name was Anna. But as we know, Will eventually married another woman, which, according to this, made Anna, the stepmom, so jealous that she started talking about those dreams. She was bullshitting as an excuse to check out the barn, knowing that Will would be blamed once Maria's body was found. Coincidentally, she only started talking about these dreams like a couple of days after Will got married. And this was like a year after Maria went missing. So she might have received a letter from Will saying, like, hey, this ends here. I'm married now. And that's when she started with the dream stuff.
I believe this rumor.
It's a good rumor, isn't it?
I believe this rumor. Because the moment you mentioned her young stepmom, my first thought was, is she sketchy? Do we like her? I don't know.
She's sketchy.
I think she's sketchy.
A little bit sketchy. Yeah.
I'm going with this one.
Mm-hmm. And one of the big things about the case was like earlier when I said, like when they were hanging, like Will and Maria were hanging out with Maria's stepmom and he like verbally asked Maria to meet him at the Red Barn. That was supposed to be like a big thing because he and Maria weren't really seen in public together very much, I think. And so it was supposed to be like, we're going to get engaged. Very convenient that the stepmom was the witness for that.
Oh,
Is all
yeah.
I'll say. I don't know.
Interesting.
I don't know. So yes, to this day, this case had all of the elements of an absolute media sensation. You have a wronged woman, you have an evil man, supernatural dreams, great detective work, and also a super fucking dramatic trial and aftermath. So the story was, and still is now, kind of a money-making machine. There were ballads written about it. I've already mentioned the plays. Even Charles Dickens wrote about it in a magazine. It was huge.
Oh.
Within a year of the trial, Polstead had an estimated 200,000 visitors. And the Red Barn itself, this is kind of sad. It was basically completely stripped away because people wanted to take home souvenirs. And Will's grave was also chipped away to being basically nothing because people wanted to take parts of it home. The barn itself burned down at some point, but there is a plaque near the area commemorating the life of Maria Marten. In more modern times, there have been at least 5 movies made about this case, 2 radio dramas, and this I thought was very interesting. In 1971, Shirley Collins released a song called Murder of Maria Marten. And in the 2018 movie The Little Drummer Girl, Florence Pugh sings part of it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, interesting, right? These days, you can also see a ton of artifacts from the trial at a museum in Bury St. Edmunds where the trial was held. I think it's called the Moyses Hall Museum. Moyses, M-O-Y-S-E-S. They have what I think is a replica of Will's death mask. I don't think it's the actual one, but you can get a pretty good idea of what he looks like. They also have the pistols, and they have the book that's bound in his skin, amongst a collection of other things.
That's wild.
And that's all I got. That's the whole story.
Yeah, I didn't know any of that. I've never heard this before, ever.
I had never either. I was just looking for a story about a bar. I found a saga.
That's what. So, just for my own clarification, the Red Barn is not a bar in any way, right? It was just okay. Because when I read that, I was like, oh, that's what I've never heard of that. Is it like a barn-shaped bar? Like, what is that? No, just literally red barn.
Just a red
Fascinating.
Barn. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm kind of hoping that maybe you have a little something for me. Maybe a little treat.
I do. I have a little bitty mini closing surprise for you. We have another very tiny listener story that I don't know if you know about. Yeah, we got one via Instagram, so I think it might have been hidden from you.
Yeah. No,
so
I never
I
check Instagram. Okay, cool.
Yeah. We got a message from listener Ashley. It says, I just got done watching your video on YouTube about black-eyed children, and I have a story like the one you tell when you're talking about the little girl you used to nanny. My grandma had passed away about a month before my cousin was going to give birth to her new baby. I got the phone call that she had given birth, so my other cousin and I decided to get on a bus to go see her. I'm sitting there on the bus, and I see this older woman. It was my grandmother.
Oh.
I was sitting there, shocked, and I was like, quote, that's my grandmother. I asked my cousin, do you see her? And she just simply said yes, confirming that she also saw my grandma sitting there. I looked at her, at the grandmother, and I said, I love you. And she looked back at me and said, I love you too. It's going to be a beautiful baby. Every time we have a new baby that comes into our family, she always shows up. She's been at every one of my kids' first birthdays, and all my other family members have seen her. Seeing her on that bus that first time was just the weirdest thing ever.
That's beautiful.
Can you imagine?
My heart.
Yeah. How long? Because she said, how long was it? About a month before her cousin gave birth. Her grandma died. So that was probably the first one, right?
Yeah.
That would have been the first visit. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great...
Is that wild?
That counts as a haunting. That's just lovely.
Yeah. Well, and I love that she showed up on a bus, because haven't we talked about that too? Like
haunted modes
weird
of transportation.
Hauntings on like a vehicle? Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Oh my God.
Not like
thank
she's
you
haunting
so much,
the
Ashley.
bus. But
no, but there's a spirit.
They can show
on
up
the bus.
anywhere. Yeah.
That reminds me of
I just thought that was lovely.
The story. We had one about a bus, didn't we? From Chloe.
From Chloe. Yeah, they reminded me of that. Certainly that was different, but still, they can be anywhere. Yeah, I thought that was so sweet. I was like, you have got to let us share this on the podcast. Yeah.
That is giving me the warm fuzzies. That feels really good.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you to Ashley for sending. We very much appreciate it. And just as a reminder to everyone listening or watching, she's a YouTube watcher. We love your stories, and we'd love for you to send. Even if you don't want us to share them on the pod, we just want to hear your stories.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, send them over to us.
Or your Tinder screenshots / whatever.
Honestly, let's go back to that. That's the new call to action for this episode. If you have any Tinder screenshots of douche bros doing douche bro shit, let us know.
What was
that's a different type of haunting.
What was that drinking game that we used to play? We used to get Tinder on our phones, and that was it. Like we would have to. It was like if you. So we would get Tinder. One of us would like pull it up, and then we would swipe through it, and you had to drink like every time you saw a guy holding a fish, every time you saw a guy at a gym.
Yeah.
Was
it's
it
regional.
Okay.
Yeah, it's regional. Like you could just do whatever you wanted. Ours, because we live in frickin' Wisconsin. Well, we did. You did. I still do. It was what you just said. Every time a guy was holding a fish, take a drink. Gym is a good, like gym selfie, like gym mirror pic.
With a dog, I think was one.
With a dog was one. With another, like, is she an ex or is she your sister?
Yeah.
That was like, that was like a 2 sips situation. Yeah. Highly recommend. That we could still play that.
Tom and I did that once. We were on a cruise a few years ago, and we both downloaded Tinder because like cruises are such enclosed spaces that like you know everyone who's there. So we were like, let's see like their fucking dating profiles. And so
oh my god, that's such a good idea.
At one of the onboard bars for like 2 hours scrolling
through and like in the bar with everyone like able to see you doing it.
It was good fun.
That's great.
So if you ever want a quick way to get drunk, that's a great game.
Oh yeah, we used to start the night with that.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, good
memories.
Times.
Yeah. Anyway,
cool. Well, yeah. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for the story. I'm very excited for Bar Month. We've got a lot of fun stories coming up, and I'm excited to keep drinking ice cream.
Me too.
So yeah, until next time, Little Spoons, keep it cool.
Keep it creepy.